We did it. We did it. We started a stream not only on time, but early. Way ahead of schedule. Who is surprised at this? No, Luffy. Not on time. Early. No, not right on. Stop saying right on time. Luke S says right on time. No. Early. Early. It is not on time. We are early. Can we properly acknowledge what just happened? DR says late. So he's on a completely different time zone. Early Morge? Yeah. No, see, Keenan gets me. Keenan said early Morge. Yeah, there we go. Early. Early. That's what I like to hear. Early. All right. You guys want to know what happened? So, as per usual, there's a little old lady trying to cross the street. And there was a car coming. Standard scenario. I've been through this many times. This time, though, I'm looking around. I'm like, who's going to push her out of the way? Obviously, it's going to fall on my shoulders again. But that would make me late for my stream. And I know that I've had to make this decision many times in the past, and I've always chosen to save the old lady. But this time, I could just feel that I've done my, I've paid my dues. I've done my good deeds. At this point, would I rather let down this old lady or hundreds, nay, thousands of people who are waiting for me to start the stream? So I made the choice. I said, today I'm going to look out for chat. And that's how we ended up here. So if you see in the news, little old woman dies getting run over by a giant truck, just know, I could have been there, but I wanted to be there for you. Skylar H says the stream will end in success. Paul Mao says the man, the myth, the legend, Warge himself. Thanks, Paul Mao. Man, so I show up early and this is the kind of treatment I get? This is nice. Maybe I should show up early every time. That's nice. This is not, I could get used to this. Bosty Jimbe says Morge is worse, Hancock. Okay, maybe never mind. Maximiliano Crespo says, would you have a baby if you knew he will have problem? What? You know what? Maybe this is why I shouldn't show up early. Maybe when I show up early, all the weird questions come in. Why would you ask? I'm never showing up early again. That's all I know. Never showing up early again. These are the type of questions that people are going to hit me with. What next? You guys going to ask me about stem cell research, huh? Luis Vasquez says, Nika Morge plush. True, we could run out a new line of plushes. All white and everything. Terry Martin says, Mr. Blorge, I'm never showing up early again. What if Gigante Luffy uses the giant Onigashima sword? Would be a cool callback to Luffy swinging around the Nidai earlier on in the arc. It would, and a lot of people are talking about how this feels similar to Nightmare Luffy in a way, and Nightmare Luffy was also a swordsman. I would still prefer Izaz1155 says Morge read regular chats too. Therefore, in the process of just reading that out loud, I've proved Izaz1155 wrong. Yeah, so Luffy, again, Nightmare Luffy used it. Luffy used Nidai Kitetsu earlier this arc. It would be really cool if Luffy pulled out that sword and used it. 100%. Would be really cool. I would rather not, just because it feels as though that's impeding, Luffy winning with a sword or using a sword, even that small step feels like it's infringing in some way on Zoro's, niche. Particularly because, especially if Luffy is effective with it, just the idea that Luffy ended up being more effective with a sword than Zoro against Kaido this arc, I think that would be particularly, disappointing, especially because, you have Zoro, he landed a scar on Kaido, and Kaido complimented that, but Zoro himself was a little disappointed. He was like, I thought I could at least, bring you to your knees. Kaido has still maintained that there's never been a samurai since Odin, as strong as Odin. So it's a few facts. Like, I would prefer the idea that if Luffy used his sword, he would not know what to do with it, as we saw with Nidai Kitetsu. I would not like to see something similar to Nightmare Luffy. Like, Nightmare Luffy was a different case, because we knew that was completely independent. That was not Luffy that was fighting right there. That was like Luffy with a bunch of stuff that he shouldn't normally have. Whereas current Luffy, Nika Luffy, this is likely going to be the form that is just Luffy himself fighting. Like, this is him. This is his power set, and that would be him going forward. So I would not like to see Luffy using a sword in that sense and being successful with it. Because it was a big deal. I mean, going all the way back to Arlong Park, that it's important that, like, Luffy made it very clear, it's important that he has skills that he just does not have. He cannot use a sword, right? That was one of the skills that was made clear that he should not have back in Arlong Park. 8 Gates Production says, week 3 if asking Daddy Morge to come back to the server. Hey, when the raid fails, I will be back. Guaranteed. People asking about the raid failing, right? People asking about the raid failing. William Marshall, message deleted. Look out for tomorrow's video, and I think, tomorrow's video will address at least how I view the current round of Luffy versus Kaido as a Kaido victory. So tomorrow we'll cover that. And I have one more video that I want to drop next time we get a break week. Next time we get a break week to fill that gap, I'll drop one more video that goes towards raid filling stuff, but it's more so on... it's a little different angle. It covers some different topics than tomorrow's video will cover. Just Johan says, do you think Luffy's Devil Fruit and Mythical Zoan reveal retcons Luffy versus Katakuri in terms of themes of the fight, such as having a better Devil Fruit than Luffy? I've heard people say that. I personally don't think it's that big of a... I get it. I personally don't think it's that big of a deal, because at that point in time, Luffy did factually have a worse Devil... Like, the Gum Fruit versus the Mochi Fruit, straight up, Mochi Fruit is just better in every way. Gum Fruit, yes, it has an awakening into the Hito Hito no Mi model Nika that is far superior to the Mochi Fruit, but at the same time, it's like, Luffy, he didn't have that at that point in time, right? Like, he didn't have that ability at that point in time. So, I don't know, I view it, I guess, a little bit differently, which is that at that point in time, it was true everything Katakuri was saying, which is that, my Devil Fruit is superior, etc. Luz Vasquez says, not gonna lie, Morge, the way Kaido's being bodied, I don't think the raid will fail anymore. I think the way Kaido's being bodied, the raid will fail. I think that's actually a good sign. So watch out for my video tomorrow, and maybe you'll get, I guess, a different perspective. TCB's here. Break is next week. I'm not lying. Like, after last chapter, right? So 1044 came out. And I was talking to TCB, who's in the chat and can confirm. And he was like, how do you still feel about the raid failing and stuff? So after 1044, I was like, I'm not sure. Let me give it a little bit. Like, let me at least wait for... I still think that the raid's going to fail. But let me wait out. Let me see 1045 and such. If I see 1045 and things are still going in this direction with Luffy kind of just bodying Kaido and, like, Oda hyping up Luffy doing really well, Luffy's attitude remaining in the same way, then I'm more confident that the raid will fail. So... the direction that, like, I was more worried after 1044. Like, after 1044, I wasn't sure. But after 1045, it's like, oh, it just seems like, yeah, it does definitely seem like Luffy's going to lose here. Where are we at? Evan Smith, thanks, appreciate it. Matthew Hunt says, do you think Luffy can use Gear 3 in giant form? To make it even bigger? No, I just don't think that's, like, this is, in that form, he can do anything, basically, right? So, sorry, in Gear 5th, he can do anything, right? So, I imagine he's already used, like, this is basically like, what if I could just use Gear 3rd on my entire body? So this is essentially, there's no such thing as, I think, using Gear 3rd on top of that, because it's just like, he can just make his fist as big as he wants anyway. So he's probably already done that, but also made his body that same size as well. Tuna Sub says, airtime for real questions. What's the best cereal? That's actually a great question. My favorite cereal is actually Reese's Puffs. And it was one of those things where, like, I was never really allowed to get it that much when I was a kid, when I was a kid, my mom really, it was just like, Cheerios, but like Honey Nut Cheerios at best, like none of the really good cereal flavors. So Reese's Puff was always like what I really, really wanted when we could occasionally get it. And so once I got to college and I could just get whatever breakfast food I wanted, then I would get a Reese's Puffs, and I would eat Reese's Puffs every single day to the point that I no longer liked Reese's Puffs. And now I just don't have sweet cereal anymore. But if memory serves me correctly, Reese's Puffs is the best cereal out there. I just don't know if I've had a long enough break from it that I would still enjoy it if I went back to it. Mad Mike says, do a thematic analysis on how you're so handsome. I appreciate that. Thank you very much, Mad Mike. Keenan says, my confidence had been waning in the past weeks, but I've never been so sure that the raid will fail after reading this last chapter. Right there with you, Keenan. Right there with you. Watch out for tomorrow's video, and then I got one more video coming on it the next week after. Covering two different angles for it. Jared says, Morge, what if the raid don't fail? How are you going to feel about the whole arc? I have to wait and see how the whole arc ends. I mean, like, the current stuff that's happening is pretty hype no matter how you spin it. Jimmy Stryker says, sup, Morge, favorite post-time skip scene? Favorite post-time skip scene might actually be, I need to give it a little bit, but at the moment, it might, okay, so at the moment, it's either basically Raizo Dono is safe, or Chapter 1044. I think it's between those two. Either Raizo Dono is safe, or Luffy's Nika Awakening. Great Kate says, my prediction, Luffy peters out just as Kaido gets a second win from his own awakening, gets bodied, Kaido lets out his victory screech, raid fails. I'm basically there with you. I think it's preceded by an important flashback for Kaido. I think it just basically goes in that direction. Skylar H says, do you think Luffy will turn off Raijin Island? I don't know if it's that important that Luffy does it, so I don't think so. Eatum says, talk in your script reading voice. No, that's I saved that for when I'm by myself. Leave me alone. Bunfagum says, do the Beast Pirates awaken when Kaido does? I think that it's very possible that Kaido defeating Luffy is kind of the first big domino. Some people, not even myself, but some people have mentioned the idea that the victory screech could in itself, the victory war cry that Kaido's talked about, or Big Mom talked about, could in itself be a trigger for awakening everybody else. Wheezy Bird, what's up? I reread the Dofi fight after 1044 and agree with you about the raid. Good stuff. Good stuff. It's just the direction of the momentum shifts right now. I think it'll make more sense when I drop tomorrow's video. Joshua Ayala says, hi Morge, what needed to happen in 1045 to signal the raid not failing? If things had suddenly become very serious and Luffy was suddenly basically, if the tone shifted, right? So 1044, that was the moment, like, tension breaks, tension was kept up for a very brief period of time, which was just half a chapter in 1043, right? But I was like, okay, if Oda's going into sudden, like, very, very serious mode, Luffy back against the wall, etc., then we'll see how this goes, right? 1044 was the breakout moment, right? Luffy's out, he's happy, he's awakened, he's at his peak, he's basically gushing about how good he feels, etc., he's having fun. I was like, okay, so now next chapter, if it kind of gets more into that final zone or whatever, if we get Kaido's motivations, etc., if we get his awakening or something along those lines, if things shift into the direction that, a final battle is usually framed as, then that's potentially a game changer here, right? But it actually just continued in the trajectory that 1044 went. Continued in that same trajectory. And most importantly, because that's not going to sound like a big reason on its own, most importantly, watch tomorrow's video because you'll understand why there's a lot more to it. I'm not just saying that, it's not serious, therefore it's not the final battle, because obviously it can still become serious. But it's the way that Oda's framing it, and more importantly, the way that he's framed Kaido's character so far and the sequence of events. The order of events matters a lot here, I think. Again, like, it's not going to make much sense till you watch tomorrow's video. I think if you watch tomorrow's video, then you'll understand why, if certain things had happened in 1045, I'd feel differently. Hold on. Gear 5 is the best gear, says bruh. I agree. I think it's the coolest gear. I definitely think Gear 5 is the coolest gear. I think that... See, there's some controversy about the last... Okay, so I'm seeing OPTC saying last two chapters suck. Zebek saying last 2 chapters were so bad. I think a lot depends on how these things play out. Eatim says, when will you be adding things to morgstore.com? So morgstore.com, as you can see in the link, still mainly has one single painting. All right. LSD Van Zyle says, raid not failing, just take the L. Let's wait. Right now, I'm more confident than I was 2 chapters ago. I think so far it's gone. Since Big Mom's defeat, post Big Mom's defeat, I was like peak confidence. Then I think post 1043 was the only chapter I was really like, oh shit, I actually don't know. Like now it's a 50-50. But now I'm back to like, okay, this is like 90% plus chance. As for more things to the Morge store, I would say it's coming, but there's some back-end restructuring that has to happen in terms of what things we would like to push out of the Morge store. Because I love the Morge store idea, and the painting is still there, and it's a great painting. And I've been talking to a couple people about potentially putting paintings in there. But there's some added work that goes into it that needs to be fixed before getting back into that. But Morge store is probably coming back with new stuff. Six Pain says, seems like the world government didn't take Luffy as serious until after his Devil Fruit reveal. Will Oda explain further? Is it purely plot armor / convenience? That's something that's just so wildly strange that I'm just going to trust that Oda has something for it. Because it's just like, come on. There's got to be something more to that, right? Ramen Stain says, Onigashima will fall, but Luffy will make it bounce off of the capital. Wano, no stakes, easy win. I think Wano will have very high stakes, and I get why a lot of people are not super happy with the way things are going, but I personally think it's all for a purpose. So it's just, yeah, I think the last 2 chapters very polarizing, it looks like, because some people love it, some people hate it. I'm of the opinion that it's cool. I like the last stuff quite a bit, but it doesn't change. In fact, it more so supports how I think that the arc is going to play out. The part here says, from Even Smith, who do you main in Melee? You strike me as a Falco or Sheik player. Oh, Falco or Sheik player, come on. Oh, I mean, if you said Falco player, you might have been right just based on probability, because like 50% of players online are like Falco. I need to get a new laptop because my current laptop literally cannot run Melee anymore. I hadn't tried it in like months. And then I tried it again recently, and now it can't run Melee. So that's nice. One of the many reasons I have to get a new laptop. But who do I main? I'm a Fox player. He's the only honest character in the game. Only Fox. All right? The only honest character in the game. And that might be a controversial take, but it's just the truth. If you really dig deep and look in your heart and think about it, you realize Fox is the only honest character in the game. Falco, oh, disgusting. Sheik, I think Sheik is kind of just not a fun character for me to play. But I have tremendous respect for anybody who's able to be good with Sheik because I think it's really fucking hard, honestly. Falco I have no respect for. How did I miss this many super chats? How's this even possible? Thanks, Part Hero. From Hey Yano, how do you see the raid endgame now? Because I feel like Luffy losing another time would be too much, especially after a power-up like this. That's just a tomorrow's video question. I think that there's so much unresolved stuff in Wano. Like, the number of unresolved things in Wano, it could fill up many videos, right? But thematically, character-wise, there's so many things that have set up that have yet to be sort of delivered on. But more importantly, like, narrative structure-wise and kind of like just to make it so that the raid has an actual... so it's not the raid actually, so that Wano in general has, a dramatic midpoint. I think that a lot of things have to come together here, basically, or sorry, not have to, but are likely to come together here. And then the following plot points, it's like if you've watched my videos long enough, I think you get the gist of things that I think that the arc is talking about or heading towards for many characters that I'm not going to just talk about here. Because then we get into the territory of like, I don't like questions like these because it's like, oh, more just like trying to write One Piece or something. Because it's like, as soon as I say something like that, then it's just like, more just trying to write One Piece where I'm like, okay, let me just stick with basically I think the raid will fail. These are the reasons that I think that. I'll keep adding those in videos, and I'll keep dropping other ideas throughout videos in terms of like, I think that this idea is set up to be important this arc. I think that this idea is set up to be important for this character this arc. And then just leave it at that, rather than say, I think this is what will happen beyond the raid failing. The part here says, from Zilla the Beast, do you think Wado breaking is an interesting character development for Zoro or a bad one? I think that would be an amazing character development for Zoro. That'd be the Wado Ichimonji breaking is probably the most interesting thing that could happen for Zoro's character, period. Also, I bet that's not something I think will happen necessarily, but if you're asking, I think that's that's probably the most interesting thing Zoro has in the bag that could happen to Zoro in general. Also, I bet Kaido's flashback starts where he awakens next chapter. I would think that the awakening happens after his flashback. That's my assumption. That's one of the things that would throw me for a loop if Kaido did his awakening before his flashback, right? So that's one of the things I was like, okay, I'm waiting on 10:45. What if Kaido does his awakening before his flashback? That doesn't invalidate what I'm arguing, but it does change a little bit what I'm arguing, and it would make me have second thoughts. As for what happens next chapter specifically, I do think either we stick with the fight a little longer. The one thing I'm waiting on still is Onigashima moving in front of the flower capital, which it should do soon, right? Because Momonosuke has stopped pulling it back, so it should move above the flower capital pretty soon. I think that's when we sort of the signal for we're basically at the climax point of this battle. Dresser says, great, Gear 5th is great in isolation, but mediocre in context, so in my opinion, Gear 4th is definitely the coolest. Gear 2nd was the best in terms of story context, by far, because the Strats had to go through so much. It was the first time Luffy got a power-up. Strats had to go through so much, right? It's accompanied by a lot of character growth for Luffy, right? He has there's reasons and development and weight behind why he realized he needed to develop Gear 2nd, and that all goes into his speech to Blueno, and that's why it's so impactful. It's such a powerful turning point, because it's kind of a point of realization where you realize that Luffy has taken everything that's been going. He's a man of action, not a man of words, but he's taken everything, all the experiences across the arc into mind, even starting all the way back with that defeat to Aokiji, which he played off like it was nothing. Even that appears to have actually stuck with him, and it's been brewing in the back of his brain, and that Gear 2nd speech that he gives before he uses it for the first time and unveils that he can go further. He's got literally another gear that he can go to take on the responsibilities that he has. The whole speech that he gives is probably one of the most mature speeches Luffy has ever given in the series. Probably the most mature speech he gave since Arlong Park, his speech to Arlong about what he can do. So Gear 2nd by far the best written, reveal for Luffy, whereas Gear 5th, I understand a lot of issues people have with how it was revealed. But in isolation, 1044, pure isolation, I think it's the coolest chapter, one of the coolest chapters in the series. Bunfagum says, why is it so hard to admit Oda has fallen off? What do you want me to say here? What do you want me to say? Leave me alone. Who are you directing this at? Leave me alone. I'm running a One Piece stream here. What do you want me to say to that? KProN says, personally, I never felt the stakes were down like some people seem to feel. I feel I left the weight of the conflict still, but the nostalgia of 2004 when I started One Piece was just fantastic. What is going on right now? What is going on? Did this just become a hub for anti-One Piece whatever right now? Am I accidentally encouraging this? Is this chat basically just a bunch of people that believe the raid will fail? Or people who think it won't fail and that therefore the arc is bad? Who are the people that are just liking it straight up? Who are the people that are just liking it straight up, raid fail or no fail? That's actually a rhetorical question. I actually do not care that much. Actually, I could throw up a poll. Nah, that's too... I don't want to throw up a poll of No, we're going to try and keep these streams positive. Hamda Jalad says, hey Morge, in chapter 277 in Skypiea, Luffy tries to get out of the... Oh, you're talking about the getting out of the blue stake from its eyes first, even stretching them out at one point, so there's that. Yeah, I thought that was cool, but I don't know. I don't know if people are bringing that up as foreshadowing or anything like that. I think that was just a natural, kind of organic little gag that made sense for that point in time where Luffy's in the belly of the snake. I don't think that Oda was thinking Maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. Like, it's just like you have to remember that, yeah, a lot of what Oda does is great foreshadowing and planning, but also One Piece is a series with 1,050 chapters, right? 1,050 chapters, right? That's like 20,000 20,000 pages or something along those lines, right? You're gonna get things that are like that have a similarity to something that's happened before just organically, right? It's just gonna happen. So yeah, maybe that was a callback or something, but I don't know. Bobby the Blizzard says, instead of the Toby getting up and rematching the Straw Hats, what would you think of them shuffling the matchups? I do think that there will be matchup shuffling, because I think that if the raid were to fail, then the Big Mom Pirates would be relevant again as well, right? I think one of the reasons that Oda is keeping the Big Mom Pirates out of the picture for so long is because this is the time to showcase the Beast Pirates, right? But Oda is also pitching this arc as basically going up against two Yonko and taking down both Yonko. So assuming that there will be a next round to all of this, right? I do think that the Big Mom Pirates are going to be in the mix as well. And that is why a lot of Straw Hats did not actually, not even just the Straw Hats, why a lot of characters in general did not get matchups, period, because only had Oda wasn't trying to show literally every single thing. Ashwin says, glad he still says Gomu Gomu. I 100% agree, but I don't think he would ever change that. I don't think he would ever change that. TCB says, Morge, will we make a video criticizing Wano if it ends how most people predict? Fight ending in 5 chapters, some back and forth in the final 2 chapters. I'll do a full review of Wano. It's not going to be like, I'm not going to call it like Wano critique or something, but I'll give a full review and I'll talk about what I liked and didn't like. Because there are things I liked. Example 1044, which I just said is probably my favorite scene in post-time skip, except maybe Rise of Dono is safe. K-Pro N says, world government have been after Luffy from the start. They had to keep Alabasta under wraps. They won at Enies Lobby. Kuma helped them. Aokiji let him go. Rin, Kuma... Yeah, no, the world government's always been after Luffy, but that's because of the things that Luffy's been doing, right? So that's always been independent of him having the Gomu Gomu no Mi, right? That was never part of the reason. Like, Luffy goes and causes like a jailbreak at Impel Down, or he breaks into Enies Lobby or something. Like, obviously they're going to be after Luffy because of that's what he did, right? It's pretty much what they say in the papers is what it is. Hamda Jaled says, don't you think that it's even funnier that Luffy's fruit has a different name, considering he's the only character that says its name with every attack? Yeah, that's true. Luffy yells Gomu Gomu. He yells his fruit name more than any other character in the series, right? He has more named. Sanji actually has a lot of named attacks. I forget. Like looking through the One Piece wiki, you'd be surprised how many attacks Sanji has, because he just names every kick. And I'm not gonna lie, a lot of his kicks just look the same. Like he's like, I know his kicks are largely named after like what body part he's kicking, like what body part of his opponents he's kicking pretty frequently. But at the same time, like so many of his kicks, especially pre-time scale, was just like, this is just a kick. This is just you rattled off 10 attack names, but they all just look like pretty much standing kicks to me. Side note, but I think Devil Fruit users, yeah, I think Luffy's got by far, he says Gomu Gomu by far the most frequently, and it's not even the actual fruit name. Thomas Cass says, now it makes sense why the straw hat Imu has is big. I don't, yeah, maybe, maybe, we still don't, was Joy Boy walking around in, slightly larger form all the time, or is Joy Boy just naturally a big dude? I don't know if it's a result of the Nika fruit or not. Evan Brown says, I'd cry if it broke, and he's talking about the water Ichimonji. I mean, yeah, that's the point. If you'd cry if it broke, then that's actually a good thing, right? Then that gives Oda reason to do it. Oh, says, I'd like if Zoro had to step up after Luffy's defeat and carry his burden, mirroring Thriller Bark and giving him more development like Sanji and Whole Cake Island. I mean, that's something I hinted at in, the last video I did, which is, potential Straw Hat threads in Wano, right? Zoro leadership storyline, it does seem like it has a lot of potential in Wano, but if Wano's about to end, then that can't really go anywhere. But I don't think Wano's about to end. I think there's a lot of characters even beyond the Straw Hats. You just look at Yamato. You can just look at fucking Yamato and be like, yeah, her character has so much more to work with right now, and it hasn't progressed one iota since her introduction. Momonosuke, is he ready to pick up Ami no Habakiri? That's an important plot point that's still up in the air. You can look down the list at pretty much every major character in Wano, and almost, I'd say Sanji is right now the only character in Wano right now, Sanji, who, whatever setup he had towards the beginning or over the course of the saga has been paid off. but that was mostly off of the work of Whole Cake Island. It actually had very little to do with what he did in Wano. Nojagrawal, it's hard to imagine Wano as 3 acts if this doesn't follow 3 act structure. I mean, that's just another, like, I've stopped even talking about it because people weirdly just decided to ignore it, but Kabuki plays have 5 acts. They just do, like, I don't know where this myth came that they're 3 acts. Maybe you could find some obscure Kabuki play that has 3 acts or something, but Kabuki plays are 5 acts. Like, that's a fact. You can just, it's like one Google search away and like every single article will tell you it's a 5 act structure. I don't really know what to say about that, but people just decided to ignore it. Which is bizarre to me, because it's like, it's just like, wouldn't this just be the standard that we all assume off of? Like, that it's going to have 5 acts, and then from there we kind of figure out how the acts will be. But at some point, I think people were just like, you know what, the raid's not going to fail, and so therefore it's just going to have 3 acts. I'm like, well, fuck, if we're allowed to argue like that, then I guess I've got nothing to say. Like, I didn't know that was allowed, that we can just be like, hey, you know what, Kabuki plays, I'm headcanoning that they have 3 acts from here on. It's like, okay. Tev Sauce 2 says, do you think that we'll end up seeing other mythical Zoan fruits that can do similar things to Luffy's awakening in the future, as in more powers than just turning into X creature, etc., etc.? I don't, that opens up like such a different ball game. I mean, like, I would like to say no. My instinct is no. I'd rather not, just because I'd rather, you know, the fruits that we get are the fruits that we get for the most part. And, you know, if you get into, like, the fact that devil fruit, we've already accepted, right? Devil fruits have awakening, so across the board, right? Think about how, like, a while back we didn't really know what awakening meant, right? Once Doflamingo started showing it, Katakuri started showing it, it started, like, raising all these theories of, like, what would this awakening look like? What would that awakening look like? So across the board already, right? We can look through all of the fruits we know of. Fucking Buggy's fruit, Mr. Five's fruit, all of these random characters throughout the series, and now we have to think, like, okay, so they already had another level to them, right? So on top of that, if it's like, okay, now what if there are more fruits that not only had awakening to think about, but like, what if they're just a totally different fruit that's way more powerful? And like, that's what they, you know, their secret identity is. Like, it just adds so many extra question marks or mysteries, etc., to fruits. Whereas I don't know if like we need that much more than the Goma Goma no Mi. You know what I mean? Mr. Crescent says, did you see Sandman's post about how Oda said he hopes to draw the Strahds back on the Sunny around 1070? I don't think it means anything. Thoughts? I haven't seen the post, and I could easily see the Strahds back. Like, yeah, if the raid fails, then the Strahds will probably be back on the Sunny at some point. Alex Weeble says, you think Gear 5 making Kaido not feel his accumulated damage until... You think Gear 5th making Kaido not feel his accumulated damage until Luffy turned it off, both King and Queen will wake up and get back up while it's on? Oh, you're saying like Gear 5th is accidentally or automatically healing people or something like that? Like, once Gear 5, while Gear 5 is around, people don't feel their damage? I don't know if that's the case. I didn't really interpret that as that's what's happening. But, I mean, as far as we know, Awakening just does seem to heal you up pretty good. So, we have to wait and see. Like, I would think that King and Queen Awakening themselves would just do the trick. Terry Martin says, when will Frankie, Brook, Jinbei get character arcs? I don't know, man. I hope at some point in Wano. I don't know. I hope at some point in Wano. That's all I gotta say. Sorry, 1 second. One second. I gotta scroll. Nicholas Froat says, do you think Kaido will actually die? I was once of the opinion that he would not die. Now I'm of the opinion that he might die, but just not in an epic battle. Like if he dies, it would not be the grand death that he wants, but rather some sort of backstabbing or something along those lines. K Pro N says, fail or no fail, I don't care. I'd like it to, though. I think that's probably the best mentality for people to have, I guess, at this point. Sean Easton says, I think Shanks probably didn't know. Garp did put Luffy with Ace. Also, I think Luffy's fruit is more of a hassle than an overpowered thing. Like Sidious finding Bugs Bunny has infiltrated the Death Star. I don't think I fully understand what you're saying here. I don't know if Luffy's fruit is more of a hassle than an overpowered thing. I think it's still just, it's a good fruit no matter what. But if you're saying, like, Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. Like it's. I get what you're saying. Like if Darth Sidious ran into Bugs Bunny, it's not like Bugs Bunny is like super powerful, but he's fucking annoying and he's got a very tricky, irritating ability to deal with. I would agree with that. Like let's not forget, Luffy also has like all like he's like stacked across the board in terms of his stats, right? Future sight. That's he still has that. Armament hockey. Well, forget that. Actually, advanced conquerors hockey to the point that he can split the sky evenly with Kaido. Like he is across the board, right? Stats wise, he's nuts, right? So imagine somebody that's really, 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 really strong that was also just given Bugs Bunny powers. Marmar says, "Don't kill your PC. Just let us shave your head." I don't really follow that train of thought or logic at all. Old Green Knees says, "Devil's Advocate. If the raid fails and rematches occur, how will the stakes be raised if the Strahds already beat their opponents?" Again, I don't think that the Strahds would fight the same opponents necessarily. Ivan, back from the card shop, says, "I swear I saw someone who looks just like you in a blue polo at my store I work at today." I wasn't wearing a blue polo though, but I do own a blue polo. Let me think. I wore a black. I actually wore. No, I don't own a blue polo. What are those things called with the buttons? Not shirts. Henleys. I have a blue Henley. I was wearing a black T-shirt today. Maybe if you thought blue is like black, maybe you got confused. Chances are it was not me though. Japanese Jim says, "Tell chat the importance of flossing teeth daily." Look, I'm not gonna lie and say I floss every day. My dentist does that for me. Crow Stray God says, "Would Katakuri, Dofi, Law, and Kid be able to awaken Luffy's fruit if they had it? Are there any other characters that would be able to?" I mean, we have no way of guessing. Like, I'm gonna say no. I'll just say no because I prefer the idea. Pure bias. I prefer the idea that it's like a Luffy thing. Luffy was able to get there. I mean, look how much Luffy had to push the fruit to get it to that point. And I maintain till the day I die that Law, that fruit is wasted on Law. Because Law, you know, he has arguably the most broke fruit in existence, right? But look at what Luffy was able to do with just rubber for so long, right? Before it became the Nika fruit. Look at everything he was able to do with just rubber. You think Law's thinking Gear second? The amount of ways that like better characters could use Law's fruit is just mind-boggling. And you guys know that I'm not even like I'm not a Law hater, I don't think, but I think the amount of love people have for Law irritates me. I don't see what's so great about him. So maybe that is what a hater is though. So maybe I am a Law hater. Maybe I am a Law hater. All right, let me make sure I didn't miss anything. Okay, I missed something. Ramen Strain says, "Is it possible Wano as a whole is brought down to sea level, effectively opening up its borders, but allowing the big mom pirates and world government to enter the country by the end of Wano? Could be Act 4 conflict." I do, okay. This falls in the category of theories that only make sense if the raid fails. So I'm not going to share it here. But I do have a strong theory in my mind, in my sense, a strong theory as to how, like, as to Wano actually being brought down to sea level, because the idea of opening the borders, right, which has been pushed for so long, that has to be something more than just the political concept of opening the borders. Okay, has to is a strong phrase, right? Doesn't have to. Nothing has to be anything, right? Story-wise. But it's just based on, like, you would expect opening the borders to be something more than just a political move, right? Because as far as we can tell, the big reason it's so hard to get to Wano is because the natural environment is so fucked. So if the natural environment is so fucked, and that's the big reason you have trouble actually getting to Wano, then I assume something will change that by the end of the story. So with that in mind, like, I think that I think I have a pretty potential good idea as to how the borders could be open, and I do think coming down to sea level is a part of that, and I actually have an idea of how it could come down to sea level. But I'm not going to talk about that here because then it just gets into, like, I don't want to get into the territory of, like, if the raid fails, then this other bold theory, because it's just like, then you're just stacking theory on top of theory, and it's like, okay, let's let this thing potentially happen first, and then move on to other stuff. Gabriel Chives says, "More, do you think we'll get more of an intellectual or diplomatic moment for Luffy where he has to solve a problem with his brain?" I don't think so. I maybe in a moment in a fight or something, but in general, I don't think so. Not right now. In my opinion, no. KProN says yes, but how could they be after him for his fruit without telling the audience this was a 20+ year reveal that would have been announced in 2005? Uh, how could they be after him for his fruit without telling the audience this was a 20+? Yeah, I don't know. Like, that's the thing. We don't know. We should just, in my opinion, let's just trust that Oda has a solid explanation for basically why Luffy's fruit was such a mystery fruit, like not something anybody cared about for so long. Andrew says people need to be patient with the reveal of Luffy's fruit. Okay, great follow up to that. Oda just having fun right now. Some mangaka lose their drive. Oda's been drawing for 25 years, and this shows his passion is stronger than ever. Yeah, I think that's something that we can all agree on, right? Which is that I think Oda is really, really passionate about One Piece right now. Like, I think he's having a lot of fun drawing what he's drawing. And, like, I think he's being very honest when he's like, I'm really looking forward to drawing Luffy like this. Like, I think he's genuinely having a lot of fun with this. So, you know, if Oda feels that things would get bogged down a little too much by explaining the intricacies behind why or why not Luffy's fruit was explained or not explained, if he thinks that that's not something that would be fun for the story right now and he's going to save that for later, then he'll save that for later. I mean, look at Gear 2, right? When that came out of nowhere, it was kind of like, how the fuck did Luffy do that, right? It just made no sense. At some point, we got the explanation. Same with, yeah, I mean, at this point, everything from that arc has been explained, right? So Diablo Jambe explains Sanji's part Lunarian as far as we can tell, right? Or genetic modification, whatever. Zoro, Ashura, we got it. Conqueror's Haki, right? So everything gets an explanation at some point for the most part. Although obviously this doesn't go to the mechanism of how the fruit works, but rather why was it not talked about. But again, I'm just going to hope that it gets an explanation. I believe it will. Ivan back from the card shop says, isn't it weird that the other person with the most Toon Force-like attacks, aka Usopp, also has a god epithet like Nika? That is true to a degree. I would not necessarily call Usopp having Toon Force attacks. I mean, he does use like a big hammer and stuff, but I think that's personally a bit of a stretch. So, I don't know. Even Evan Brown says, do you think when Imu woke up, he/she told the Gorosei about Luffy's fruit and Shanks was just a smoke and mirror type thingy? Maybe. The tricky part is that Imu came up with Vivi's poster, right? So something about Vivi had him thinking, okay, I need to single out Vivi here, right? And we know some bad stuff happened to Vivi afterwards. So yeah, maybe Imu is the only person that knows about the Gomu Gomu no Mi. And maybe Imu was asleep or some shit for the last 3 years. Or maybe Imu doesn't check the news. Or maybe Imu almost never talks to the Gorosei or something, right? Everything that's going on in the outside world is beneath him. So that's a possibility. That's a possible explanation. I am shifting a little bit basically towards the opinion, like for a long time, I've even after the introduction of Im, I think yeah, after the introduction of Im, there's a lot of discussion about is Im going to be the final villain of the series, and I still held out that I think it's going to be Blackbeard, but I don't think at this point I'm starting to think that it might just be, you know, it might actually just be Im as the final villain. So it's hard to call. It's definitely hard to call. I I part of it is just that like Im is an exciting villain possibility, right? Im is an exciting villain possibility, that's for sure. Whereas Blackbeard, we've had him around for a while, so it's like I could go for something new. I could go for a mix-up. Im as the final villain seems cool. Pirate Hero says from Gabriel Chavez, more. Do you think we'll get a more? Oh no, covered it. Covered it. Old Green Knee says, who do you realistically think can fight Zoro/Sanji other than King/Queen? Out to Keenan. Shout out to Keenan. I'll say this, which is that I do think that there's a lot of setup for Zoro to get another round against Kaido. I think there's a lot of I don't think Zoro's going to kill Kaido, but I think there's a lot of setup for Zoro to go up against Kaido. And I have my thoughts on Sanji, but like again, like this is one of those things where the more if I talk about it more, because I do actually have a solid list type rundown. I'll share it, you know what, at the end, at the conclusion of this, right? I'll share it at the conclusion of this. The things that I thought could have led somewhere, didn't lead somewhere, like setups that I thought might be going to happen, including a lot of the matchups that I thought seemed very, very possible, right? But I do think that uh, I do think that if I go into the territory of like, here's what I think all of the matchups could be or something, it just gets like it it like looks a little like, let me just focus on the main event that I think is going to happen, which is the raid failing, right? If I start going off again into tangents of like, I think the raid will fail and then this will happen and then this will happen and then this will happen, blah 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 blah, then I think it gets a little bit too much into the territory of like more just trying to paint out this fan fiction version of One Piece, and I'm like, I don't want to do it like that, right? Like, let me just talk about what I think is going to happen here. Sure, I have some guesses at what happens after that, basically across the board, but that's not really healthy or like good to think about. Let me just focus on the main things that I do think are clearly set up to happen by the conclusion of this battle, the Onigashima battle. Jared Rabon says, "Yo, just joined the stream late. I'll be watching this one back. Hope you're doing well, brother." Thanks, appreciate it. DJ De Vera says, "Morge, I need to know if raid will fail," in all caps. It will. Don't worry about it. Juan Pret says, "Sanji's not part Lunarian. I refuse." Okay, maybe he's not. I don't know. Maybe he's not. Who am I to say? Ashwin, thanks so much. Thanks a lot, man. That's huge. Theory: Shanks came to East Blue to give Ace Roger's kid the fruit. Listen, yeah. All right. Well, now it's not going to be a video. I talked about this had come up in super chats, I think last stream or the stream before that, but it's something that I've been wanting to do ever since I did the Marineford video. Ever since I did the Marineford video where I talked about how like Shanks chose Luffy, Whitebeard chose Ace, because I do believe for the long. I'll finish reading your super chat. Ace is the one chosen by destiny. Yeah. Luffy was chosen by the silliness of Joy Was Fruit, as Luffy's goofy. Luffy's not a child of destiny. So this was. Thanks, Ashwin. Maybe there's still enough of my stuff that I could scrape together a video for it, but like that is something that I felt I thought it during the process of writing the Marineford video, which is just that look, a lot points to like whatever Roger told Shanks before Roger left, right? Whatever reason Shanks, who was already fighting Mihawk regularly, right, to the point that the duels were so legendary, Whitebeard had heard about them. Why was Shanks in East Blue, and why was he wandering that area for so long, right? And why did he have the Gomu Gomu no Mi on him at the time? And we know that Roger had already believed that his son would be the one who is Joy Boy, right? Who would fulfill the destiny, etc., right? Everything seems to point to me. I mean, we know that Whitebeard chose Ace in the end once he met Ace, right? But everything seems to point to me that Shanks was in the area because he was looking for Roger's son. He was looking for Roger's son. It went to the wrong kid. And that is a recurring idea between Luffy and Ace, that it is supposed to be an Ace, but it ended up being Luffy in so many different ways. Like, who did Blackbeard end up getting, right? Who ended up surviving the Marineford War? So, a lot of interesting stuff there, and I do think it comes down to, like, yeah, Shanks was looking for Ace. The fruit was probably meant for Ace, but things just went a different way. It was just a twist of fate, right? So maybe I still put out a video on it at this point, but I'd have to look through notes and make sure that I still have enough that's like not talked about right here that fits it. But I definitely agree with you, Ashwin. Thomas Kaz says, "I've been saying that Usopp will get a legit hammer in Elbaf, but what if he gets a plant-based attack inspired by the Yggdrasil? The island is Norse themed." So I don't know enough about Norse mythology to talk on it, but for me, for the longest time, I've been very curious as to why Oda gave Usopp plant-based abilities. If it's going to be followed up on in Elbaf as some sort of organic tie-in to the mythology, then that'd be cool to see. I mean, the closest I could think of is that Usopp has plant-based abilities because, one, logistic side, it's like if he can shoot things that can grow, change shape, do different effects like smoke, gas, etc. It adds to the versatility of Usopp's arsenal, right? I mean, really, it just makes it so that Usopp can be very creative in how he fights. I don't think we've had a truly creative Usopp fight yet to see the full range of what this plant fighting style can really look like at its best. We haven't had anything in depth for Usopp aside from the Fishman Island fight, which was obviously just a teaser. And then on the flip side, it's like, okay, symbolically, thematically, whatever, Usopp's character is the straw that has the most growth in general. His character arc is the most focused on growth. So he gets plants or something. But at the same time, it still just never felt right to me that Usopp suddenly went to being a plant user. So if it all ties into something, yeah, guys, like the stream. Like the stream. Hold up. AJK says 1,000 likes and we will get a Morge Bollywood dance. Listen, I've done many a Bollywood dance for stream in the past, and I've done them for likes. So what AJK is saying right here can be trusted. Like the stream. Like the stream. Let's get to 1,000. Let's get that Bollywood dance, as we so often do. Yeah, I mean, Usopp, if there's some greater connection to a plant, like some evolution to his plant-based fighting style, something major that we get in Elbaf, that'd be amazing. Would help cement him more in my mind as a cool plant-based user. Wait, we got to do it in small steps. Let's get to 600 first. 1,000 is a big call. Oh, we just got to 500, it looks like. Let's get to 600. Then we'll talk. Andrew says, think Nika is ancient weapon Uranus, god of the sky. Oh, God, no. Please don't let the fruit... I don't know if you're talking about the fruit or the original Nika himself. If it's the original Nika himself, I don't know if we're actually going to meet a figure like that in the story. We still don't really understand the context of mythical devil fruits and everything like that and how they function. Like, what is the origin of them in the One Piece story? Like, was there an actual Buddha figure, right? That the mythical Zoan, is inspired. Like, we don't know, right? We know that there was a dragon in the one-shot Monsters, right? And that is canon to the One Piece story. So dragons were in the One Piece world, but it just raises so many questions. It's like, okay, so Nika was literally a figure at some point then? Was Buddha literally a figure at some point then? Raises a lot of questions. Like, I can get behind, like, oh yeah, there are phoenixes and dragons and shit, but like, this other stuff, that's a little strange. All right, we got to 600. New negotiation. Let's get to 800. All right, let's get to 800. That's the new plan. And then we talk the Bollywood dance. The Bollywood dance for 1,000. All right, but first we got to get to 800. Anuj Agrawal says, 1 out of 2. Go reread end of 1037. Gorosei didn't know about the fruit as Nika. They only know now because of some revelation, most likely Shanks/Imu. Okay, that's good to know. I do have to go reread that part. Anuj Agrawal, part 2. Oh shoot, I scrolled right by it. I'm getting back to you, Anuj. Give me a second. I'll get there. All right. Its awakening was only a legend to them. Who's Who even regards his mistake as a simple one because no one knew the importance of the fruit back then. I think it'll come when I reread all of Onigashima. Let me reread all of Onigashima and then we get a good idea of it. Also got to pick between, pick apart the official translation, stuff like that, versus TCB. Zilla the Beast says, so maybe there's not like a big question mark around it, right? Maybe it is just such a lost to legend mystery fruit that really only Imu or someone knows about it. But in general, it's just like something that's spoken of and not something really concrete. However, then the question really does come in, which is basically like, okay, it feels like the Gorosei had really concrete information when they're like, CP0, you need to eliminate Luffy right now or something bad will happen, right? So where did that concrete information come from? If it's just clarified by Oda soon down the line that like, hey, nobody really concretely knew what's up with the Gomu Gomu no Mi or what's the story behind it, but Imu did, and Imu basically came to his attention recently, and so he told the Gorosei, etc. Zilla the Beast says, Luffy will beat Imu first, freeing the current world. Then he fights Blackbeard for the future of the world's clean slate, whether it falls into darkness or not. Yeah, so that's something, it makes sense based on, something I talked about at length in my Blackbeard analysis video, which is basically like they both represent the idea of destruction of the current order and the dawn of a new era. The idea is that Blackbeard's dawn is actually a much worse world, right? It's a world of chaos, etc. Whereas Luffy's dawn is actually freedom, right? So I like the idea that Imu goes down first, and then the battle for the new world is between two Ds, right? And two pirates, right? Who's going to be the person who shapes the future of the One Piece world, right? I like that idea, but I could also easily see the series concluding with, it depends on what Oda wants to play with more first, right? Like, or play with above above all else, right? Like the idea of Luffy defeating the gods, defeating God, which I suppose is Im in this situation, and bringing freedom to the world, and that's the final concluding piece of One Piece, or concluding it with a grand pirates duel for basically the fate of the world, like the direction that the world chooses, like the sun or the darkness, right? So, two routes we can go there. I'm pretty cool with either. It just depends on how Oda wants to play it. I think the setup is there for either. Phantom Greyfire says, "Miss Super Chat from Silver of the Deep. Do you think Toki's fruit will be relevant in the story again?" Yes. Add that to my list of this is the more minor reasons. Add that to the list of the reasons I have, though, why I think Wano goes on a while longer. KGM78 says, "I think Imu will be the final villain because of how it could mirror Alabasta then Skypiea. Luffy defeats Pirate, then a god. Both EB and GL end with a world government antagonist. Smoker in Loketown and Marineford." Yeah, I mean, I can see that. I just don't know if that's like you can pick Alabasta and Skypiea, but you could also pick like plenty of other arcs for that sort of concept. You know, like you could just pick two other arcs and be like, well, in this order, it was this first, then this, right? Like Dressrosa, you know, Doflamingo represents God in Dressrosa. That happened first, and then the Wano arc, right? So first that, then Pirates, you know. I do like if I had to really bet money right now, I'd maybe guess Im, but I think there's a good shot for either of them. A really good shot for either of them. Path D Psycho says, "Any thoughts on how the newer Marineford video performed?" I haven't actually checked in a bit. Let me take a look. I was happy with how it performed because the first one wasn't really a good video. Like the first one was supposed to be like a smaller video that discussed some aspects of Marineford that made it cool, like a unique setup that like I haven't quite seen a setup like Marineford. Like the way that yeah, so the new one has over 300k views. The first one has like 188k views. So like I'm happy with how the new one did. Yeah, I don't think I have much more to say on that because yeah, I guess just the first one was not meant like the first one was meant to be like a precursor to a much bigger Marineford video. It just took way longer to get the new one out. So I'm happy how the new one did. Was there anything else more I want to say on that? No, just that like okay, the big thing is that after I finished that Marineford video, I I remembered how long it takes to do those type of videos because it's like you don't do one for a bit and then it's like okay, I remember the general steps, I remember roughly how long everything takes. If I do it optimally, I can get it done in this framework of time, and then it's just so much longer than you expect. And if I could do it again, I would definitely cut down a lot of the first half and actually put some stuff that I cut back into it, because sometimes you just cut and keep the wrong things. Jacob Patino says, "Do you think Blackbeard's original 4 crew are particularly significant like Luffy's original 4? It's interesting that his right hand was not an OG." So I've talked about this before, but Oda does like highlighting the meeting between the captain and the first mate, right? He does like doing that, and that's a scene that you see recurring throughout the story. And Oda does it actually in a pretty similar manner pretty frequently. So a lot of the times it's the captain freeing the first mate in some way. So Luffy freeing Zoro, obvious, right? But then also you have Crocodile freeing Daz Bones and Impel Down. And he's the only Baroque Works member that Crocodile singles out. And he's like, I want you coming with me, so I'll free you. Kaido obviously freeing King, as we saw recently. And then Blackbeard, he didn't personally free Shiryu, but Blackbeard showed up, and that caused Shiryu to be freed, because Shiryu had to be freed to stop Blackbeard. So Blackbeard showed up, caused Shiryu to be freed, but then Blackbeard was just like, hey, you just come with me. So Oda likes doing the captain first mate thing. Now people are going to complain about Zoro not being the first mate or whatever, but like, come on. Yeah, the captain first mate thing, Oda has a recurring pattern of how he likes to portray that. So it wouldn't have worked if Blackbeard's, right hand man was just grouped with him with that first starting 4. As for the significance of the starting 4, right? Significance of the starting 4, to me, in my opinion, it's just that I think that Oda likes to I think it's possible that for the most part, Oda is lining up the Blackbeard crew development to parallel Luffy's crew development. So at that point in time, Blackbeard had Lafitte, Navigator. I would assume that that's going to be a good matchup for Nami. Lafitte had Van Augur, Sniper. I assume that's going to be a good matchup for Usopp. Blackbeard had Lafitte. Blackbeard had Van Augur. Blackbeard had Doc Q. Luffy had Chopper. So good matchup there. Blackbeard had Burgess. And I think that that's a potential matchup for Sanji if Burgess gets some significant power boost or something like that. Which obviously they all can because of Devil Fruit Collection and stuff like that. And then we didn't get a Zoro thing just because, as I said, keeping that recruitment separate. One sec. Where we at? Mahavid Siddiqui says, "Don't lie about dancing, Morge." I don't. Lying is a strong word. Maybe we've all forgotten that it happened. Lying seems very harsh. Martin Cortaberia says Usopp plants could tie into Norland being a botanic. That's true, which is actually just I completely forgot that part of it. That Nolan actually was able to examine the trees in their forest and be like, "Hey, this is what's up." I completely forgot about that. Continuing the Usopp Nolan parallels. That's interesting. Old Green Knees says, "Stop being politically correct. We are here because we like your ideas. If you have matchups you want to see after the raid fails, say it with a dawn." That's true. Could do that, but at the same time, like, how do I say this? At the same time, I could say those, and then if some of those require lengthy reasoning for why I believe that, then I would rather just get those out in a video format. You know what I mean? Like, for example, what's an easy example? Okay, if I just came out and said, like, hey, Zunisha could be Pluton, all right? Sure, I could say that on stream, and people would be like, hey, we're interested in your ideas. What do you think Zunisha is? I'm like, I think Zunisha is Pluton. And then people are like, that makes no fucking sense. And then I could give some reasons for it, right? But it doesn't really, like, for something that's particularly bold or particularly out there, right? It takes a much longer set of reasoning and, like, more thorough, articulate reasoning with panels and evidence to really make a good case and not sound crazy. So, yeah, I could talk about matchups that I think will happen post this, but a lot of those reasoning, like something easy that I can throw out is like, hey, I think Zoro gets another round against Kaido. I do think that happens, right? I think there's more that Zoro does, but I think that's going to happen. And that's not something crazy for me to say because a lot of people already believe and they know the reasoning behind why Zoro getting another round against Kaido could make sense, right? We have quotes from Zoro, we have quotes from Kaido. There's things that make sense that could set up for that in the future, right? And Zoro's, of course, going through something very similar to Luffy right now that suggests that there's more to Zoro's storyline in Wano. But there's other things that I could throw out, right, as future matchups that people would be like, wait, that doesn't make sense. Okay, then who matches up with this person? Then why would this person match up with this person? So for things that I know are basically like 2 steps away from what people are thinking right now, it's just not worth it to get into on stream unless I feel like I could give a quick, concise, comprehensive argument right now, which I don't think, like, at the moment I'm like, all right, let me at least get out another video explaining why I think Luffy loses here and why I think the raid's going to fail. Let me at least get those reasons out before we start moving on further into, like, here's how I think a lot of other things can play out across the board beyond that. Thomas Kaz says, if Noah has a similar purpose to the one in the Bible, could the animals on Rusakena be the descendants of the original passengers? They're huge. I think that's a bit of a stretch. Because, like, Rusakena, cool island, but there's, like, also so many other islands that are, like, like, I don't think there's anything stand out to think that, hey, Rusakena is, like, the product of Noah's Ark or something. It also doesn't super duper make sense because it's, like, the idea is, like, animals would, on an ark, would basically be, they would procreate to, like, repopulate the earth or whatever, versus just being on Rusakena. It doesn't really, I don't really know if that follows. Maybe you're right though. I have no actual idea. I don't think there's any special significance to Rusakana as far as I can tell though. Tofi 2000. I already know the question that's coming. Do you think One Piece will have a really big plot twist which will turn the story upside down? I do think that. Yes. Really liked your video about how the Nika Nika no Mi fits better to Luffy now. Yeah, I think that that video, I think that that was like maybe it helped sway a few people over to the side that they're cool with it, but the people that don't like it, which is very very understandable, a lot of people as I'm seeing basically don't like it because of the setup of how he got it right. Not like, hey, does it fit Luffy as a concept? Because sure, I think a lot of people agree that it fits Luffy as a concept, but rather how this awakening happened, was the setup earned, yada yada, was it properly hinted at throughout the story, things like that. Mr. Crescent says, do you think Luffy's at his peak? I just can't imagine Oda topping this, but read failing, so I think Oda's just having fun. The chapter was goated. I think that Luffy at this moment is the strongest he's ever been, but I definitely think that like he will be stronger by the end of the story. So I don't think he's literally at his peak. Just oh, Virgo's here. What's going on? Hey man, what's going on? Haven't seen you around in a bit. Virgo says, stopping by, showing some love. Can't stay though. Good luck on the stream, Morge. Thanks, man. Gigatronma says, BB will be the final villain. As he's fighting Luffy in the throne room, BB will sit on the empty throne as the red line is crumbling, and he'll drown with this treasure like Long John Silver. That would be wild. I don't know if that happens, but that would be wild. Super chat from Six Pains. I missed it. Thanks, Part Hero. I think people are just doubting that Wano will be 5 acts based just on how long we've been here already. Wano fatigue, question mark. I mean, all I can, I just don't know what that means, because I'm like, first of all, people, short memory, many people. If you go back, look at, I don't know, threads, videos, whatever, as Wano was beginning, many people were of the opinion that Wano's going to be about, 100 chapter, like Dressrosa length. It was crazy how many people thought that Wano would be like Dressrosa length or shorter. Some people were even saying things like, well, Oda said he never wants to do an arc as long as Dressrosa again. And it's like, this is insane. Like, Wano has the most buildup of any One Piece arc ever in history, period. Like, way more. Like, there's nothing comparable. So because there's nothing comparable to Wano, like, if you consider the fact that Dressrosa was a one-day mini side event on the train leading up to Wano, that should put in perspective how major Wano is in the grand scheme of things. So to me, there's not really like a limit to how long Wano is supposed to be. So Wano right now as is, most people are surprised that Wano is already this long. Most people did not have it on their radar that Wano was going to be 150 chapters when the arc started. You can go back and check, but that was basically consensus opinion. Very few people had it even at 150 chapters. So to me, I just generally think that the One Piece community is not good at estimating how long arcs are going to be. But like, it's like, that's not really a reason, you know what I mean? Like, when we're talking about the act structure, if you're like, if it's like, well, Kabuki plays are supposed to be 5 acts, and we're in Act 3, so therefore there will be 2 more acts. And then the response is just like, yeah, but it's so long already. That's not really like a reason, you know what I mean? Like, that's just kind of an arbitrary thing of like, well, I personally think it has to be this many chapters, therefore it can't be 2 more acts, when it's like, that's not addressing what the argument is, which is the structure that is set there is that it would be 5 acts. So maybe if you gave a reason like, I don't think we'll be following that structure because there's this alternative structure or something, like it just, the response to it doesn't really address the argument, which is just like, also, by the way, 3rd acts are supposed to be the longest acts in Kabuki plays by far, so that also explains why this act could be potentially, like 100-something chapters at the end of the day. But you get what I'm saying? Like, I just don't really know how to respond if you're just like, well, the arc is so long already. I'm like, yeah, but the story, if you look at the story, like, so many things are not fully developed at the moment, right? Character-wise, plot threads that are still hanging, themes that are still underdeveloped, and most importantly, like, narrative structure-wise, it does still look like we're just in the middle of the arc, basically, where you would expect a normal arc, like, even if you ignore Kabuki structure, looking at a normal narrative arc, yeah, it looks like we're at about the middle section of it. Joshua Scott says, how do you feel about Garp fighting for freedom of the weak? And the best route to that is the Order of the world government. Blackbeard would be the opposite side of that. Yeah, like objectively, if your goal is to protect the weak or whatever, you would join the Marines. Even if there's like a lot of bad shit going on there, you would still join that side because there's not a lot of like if you're a strong figure in the world, you're either joining the Marines and fighting for that, or you're choosing to do your own thing and basically carve out your own path to accomplish your own personal ambitions and goals, which is the pirate's path, right? So Garp naturally, if his goal is to protect, then he would join the Marines. But that doesn't necessarily mean, what do you call, uh, what do you call that? He wants to be like that's the route that he truly wants, right? It's just like the lesser of two evils. If you're really strong and you want to have an impact on the world, then you pick one of those two routes: pirate or Marines. Ricky Elion says, "Can Luffy make others gigantic? We need Nami huge." God damn. Why do you want Nami huge? Hmm? Sorry, things are freezing. Definitely need that new computer. Hold up. Hold up. We're catching up. We're catching up. Okay, hold on. Hold on. All right. Micah Twombly says, "Are there any other smaller plot threads that you're looking forward to being resolved that maybe others have forgotten about or overlooked?" This is a tomorrow's video question. You'll find me mentioning several smaller plot threads, or quickly running through as a refresher several smaller plot threads at the very end of the video. The video in general focuses only on one main thing, one main aspect of Luffy versus Kaido that indicates to me that things will go negatively for Luffy. But I do reference a lot of other things towards the end of the video. And I think I'll have one more video basically during the next break week, which TCB tells me is next week. One more video talking about why it looks like there's still more to go for Wano from a lot of small bits of dialogue that are still hanging. TY says, "Luffy is using armament in 1045 with no black coloring. Luffy's body is soft and moldable in Gear 5th. Does this confirm black coloring is just for hardening and not just showing armament in general?" I mean, what about Conquerors though? Like 1045. I'll be honest, I was not super duper paying attention to the hockey usage and like all that during the last two chapters, right? I saw Black Lightning sparks and stuff coming out here and there in panels. So I'm like, okay, Conquerors hockey, Advanced Conquerors hockey still being used. But I haven't super duper paid attention to like, okay, when is black armament being used? When is whatever, right? I do think in general that black coloring is just for hardening and not just showing armament in general, because there's other random, like you don't have to point to this fight, there's plenty of other moments throughout the series where Oda has a character clearly using armament hockey, but does not have them using black coloring. Freeloader178 says, "Who's the first chronologically of Luffy's fights who could survive one punch from Gear 5th? That's too hard to say because we don't actually know how strong Gear 5th is, like, punch-wise, right? Like, we know it punched Kaido's face in like all the way, but that's also part of just the effective Gear 5th, which makes everything have toon-verse rubbery effects. So it's hard to say like pure punching power how much Luffy's changed things versus, I mean, he can clearly make himself way stronger, like with giant muscles. He can play jump rope with Kaido by making himself gigantic. He can do so much. You know what? I think most characters could survive one punch from Gear 5th Luffy because it's One Piece, so most characters can survive plenty of things. If you want to say like one-shotting, I think, I think like, look, Kaido one-shotted Luffy at the start of this arc. I wouldn't be surprised if Luffy right now could one-shot Katakuri if Luffy landed a hit on him, right? Obviously, Katakuri still has future sight. And that's no knock against Katakuri, but like, Luffy already had more durability than Katakuri. And then Luffy got one-shotted by Kaido. So at this point, like, Luffy himself is, like, stronger than base Kaido at least. So you get what I'm saying? Like, scaling-wise, it seems to make sense to me that Luffy could one-shot someone like Katakuri right now. If he landed a hit. Tuna Sub says, "Random unlikely idea. NL and his army comes back to get stomped by Shiryu and he feeds the lightning fruit to a sword. Shiryu throwing lightning at Zoro with a sword just sounds like a dope fight." I've really thought about, like, who I would love to see NL's fruit go to, because I do think NL's the perfect character to get fruit farmed. My personal vote mentally has been NL, just because NL is the shittiest character with the strongest fruit, which, like, that combination makes him perfect to get fruit farmed. And if his fruit is going to go to any of the Blackbeard pirates, I would love to see it go to Shiryu, because Shiryu's like, he's the second strongest member of the crew behind Blackbeard. So you would want him to have a strong fruit like the lightning fruit. It just kind of fits. Also, his name is Shiryu of the Rain. So, maybe Shiryu, like maybe a little step towards Shiryu of the Lightning or something like that. But there's nothing intrinsically about Shiryu that suggests that he would get the lightning fruit. Tommy says, how old is Morge? I'm 26. D-Factor says, overall, I love Gear 5th, but it goes against inherited will. Like, back when people were saying Roger has Luffy's fruit, now Luffy has Roger's fruit. So, I mean, I did do that whole video about how reincarnation ruins inherited will, which it does. I'm still shocked that people argued against that reincarnation doesn't ruin inherited will. It just does. But the fruit thing, I think that the fruit works as part of inherited will. I think it does. I think the Roger, it's tricky because I was one of the people who's like, I wouldn't like the idea of Luffy having Roger's fruit. It never seemed like that possible in the story that Luffy would have Roger's fruit, but I think the main reason for that was that it just felt so generic. It wasn't like any sort of thematic ruining reason, right? It just felt generic, right? Like Luffy has Roger's hat, that's inherited will. Luffy getting Roger's fruit, like, it would just be too on the nose. That's the thing. It's like it's just too cliche, too on the nose, etc. That Luffy's the next Pirate King. The reason I think I and many others don't feel the same way about Joy Boy, whether you think this is a good reason or not, I'm just saying why many people don't feel the same way as if Luffy had Roger's fruit versus Luffy having Joy Boy's fruit, is because Joy Boy is just such a more vague concept. Like, Roger is a character that we know and is referenced over and over throughout the story, and he's just been the guy since day one that we're hearing about and we know Luffy is chasing, right? So the idea that Luffy just had his fruit from the start, that would feel kind of like eye-rolling, right? Versus Joy Boy is a more vague concept. We barely still know anything about Joy Boy. We've only just started hearing about him in the post-time skip. So like hundreds and like 600 something chapters in the series, we start getting some hints about him and hearing his name dropped and stuff. So it's just more detached, like less concrete in our minds what it would mean that Luffy's the next. Like, we're still figuring it out. Like, we're still figuring out what does it mean that Luffy has Joy Boy's fruit. We get the idea that it seems to awaken, like, it seems to be Luffy literally in some sense taking up that mantle or whatever, at least according to what Zunisha is saying. But because it's more vague and because we have less info on it, it's just like I guess it's more palatable to a lot of people, I guess myself included, even if logically it's the same thing, if not worse, than Luffy having Roger's fruit. It's just the way that it played out in the story. It's more palatable mentally for people to be like, okay, Luffy has Joy Boy's fruit. That's cool. Like, I personally am cool with it. I kind of like it. Maybe that's just because I love the fruit so much. I love seeing this fruit fight. Joey Jojo says, I've always wondered why Burgess would want to go after Luffy's C-tier Devil Fruit and Dressrosa. Maybe Blackbeard knows about the true name of the Gomu Gomu no Mi too. I have no idea about that. If Blackbeard knew that, I think he would have gone way, way, way harder to try and catch Luffy pre-time skip. Way harder. Like, he really, really, he was cool with switching. He made it kind of clear that he was only after Luffy because he wanted to take out a pirate with a high bounty to get Shichibukai status, right? As soon as Ace came up as the new opportunity, he took Ace, passed on Luffy. Same thing in Impel Down. Like, if Blackbeard was really after the Gomu Gomu no Mi, he would have tried to do more at Impel Down to capture Luffy, in my opinion. Maybe he learned it post-time skip. We don't know. Surreal Soviet says, could Luffy potentially rejecting the mantle of Joy Boy inspire Yamato to reject the identity of Odin in order to form her own path? I would love to see something like that happen. We just gotta, stuff like that requires more to the arc, I think. Because Yamato's really, her character is literally still at square zero. Phantom Greyfire says, forget stage play analysis. Oh, he's talking to the pirate hero. That's cool. I'll just not respond. Babtron. Oh, god damn it. Morb. Says, Morb, Luffy lifespan is in the mud. Hashtag Babtots. I do like the possibility that we're getting more Luffy lifespan issues with Gear 5th being used, because that was kind of dropped with Gear 2nd, right? Now Luffy uses it whenever he feels like it. We don't know if it's still affecting his lifespan. But Gear 5th did seem to have Luffy in some sort of a state at the end of it. AJK says, Morge, it's been a minute. How are you, my guy? Seems like your skincare routine has been leveling up. Thanks, I appreciate that. Might just be the lighting. Ricky Aelion says, "Is Luffy be actually my lighting? I keep it way too bright. I need to tone this down a little bit." Um, Ricky Aelion says, "Is Luffy being Nika ruining Will of D? Is Luffy being Nika ruining Will of D?" No, I don't think so. I don't think so. Because as far as we can tell, the only really coincidental thing that happened here is Luffy ate the fruit, and it sounds like the fruit. It's like a bit of destiny, right? But it's also a bit of a coincidence, and it's also like, if it's correct that Shanks was looking for Ace and gave Luffy the fruit, Luffy got the fruit instead. It's not even that crazy of a coincidence because somebody actively brought the fruit to the area Luffy was at, and it just so happened that Luffy ate it instead of the other person, which isn't that crazy. Like, it's not like throughout the wide world Luffy happened to come across the Gum Gum fruit. A lot of things like with intent happened, and Luffy just happened to fall into the right place, right time. And then on top of that, the fruit has a bit of a will of its own, right? So we know that the fruit, if it has a bit of a will of its own, then we know that there's intent behind a lot of this, right? So, uh, I don't think that actually answers your question, though. I don't think it ruins the will of D. I guess I'm justifying a little bit like the coincidences that happen around it, but I don't think it ruins the will of D in any way. I think that's a separate conversation. Cole says, "Where/why do you think Zoro fights Mihawk? Before Raftel Shirley's, Luffy can't be the Pirate King without the world's strongest swordsman on his crew." I've said before I think it happens at Elbaf because I do think that Mihawk is going to link up with Shanks' crew. Not going to join them, but he'll probably just hang around them, kind of like Law hangs around Luffy and his crew for so long. Because Mihawk lost his Shichibukai status and he probably doesn't want to be bothered by Marines every single day. So he'll go chill with his drinking buddy Shanks. And I think he will meet up with Luffy and the crew at Elbaf, same as, you know, we get a lot of connections there, Luffy and Shanks. We get Usopp reuniting with Yasop. We get Zoro and Mihawk. I think a lot of things will play out there. Adenlit Herrera says, "Do you think Luffy dies after defeating Kaido?" Do I think Luffy dies after defeating Kaido? Do I think Luffy dies after defeating Kaido? No? Say no. Miss Super Chat from Hamda Jaled, thanks, Bart here. What do you think about Luffy being all white? Do you think it has any connection to Sulong or the pills from Fishman Island? I think Luffy being gold was cooler. I think it's possible that Oda only made that decision to make Luffy white just to avoid Super Saiyan, Naruto clone type discussions or whatever. I do think gold was cooler. I just think it was cooler. I think we'll all get used to white Luffy pretty soon, but I do think gold was cooler. It's kind of similar to, for the longest time, people thought Kaido was a red dragon, and he was always colored as being a red dragon, and it just seemed to make sense. He had like the scales on his body that we see normally; they're red, or whatever you want to call that. He has red on his body in human form. So we all imagined that, dragon form was red, and that was what all the artwork and everything like that of him was like. And then Oda drops a color spread or a volume cover or whatever, and it turns out Kaido's a blue. He's an Azure dragon. Now, I'm not gonna lie, like, I've gotten over it now. Now I just think of Kaido as a blue dragon. But at the time, a lot of people, I don't know if you remember, a lot of people were disappointed that Kaido was a blue dragon. It just seems less intimidating and less Kaido-y than the red version. The red version did seem cooler. You can actually go back and see fan colorings back then, and I think the red version's cooler. But we're also used to the blue version now. We can't really think of it in any other way. But at the time, blue was actually a disappointing reveal. Turns out it makes sense for mythology purposes. Blue dragon has significance to Eastern mythology and everything like that. So that's why Kaido is a blue dragon. But doesn't change the fact that just straight up instinctively the red version was cooler. So I think same thing kind of happening here. Oda probably has his reasons for why Luffy's white. Maybe it's connection to Sulong. Maybe it's trying to be its own thing rather than copying the golden look of other series. But the golden look is a golden look for a reason. I think the golden look was cooler. Like, there's a reason that you see that so commonly. The golden color power up for so many characters throughout Shonen. It just looks cool. Like, who cares if it looks similar to Super Saiyan? It's still a visually different look. Andrew Connor says, "When Vegapunk comes to Wano, will Luffy be captured to complete the world government's giant program, since awakening can affect even living things?" I don't personally think Luffy gets captured by the world government. I don't think that that's the case. I do think Vegapunk comes to Wano, though. 8 Gates Production says, "What theory will make you..." Oops, scrolled. Where'd I go? Fuck. I'll find you, 8 Gates. Give me 1 second. Fuck, what just happened? Okay, what theory will make you the king of theorists when it comes true? Shanks' arc being Elbaf or the raid failing? I mean, I think that the biggest theory that people associate me with is the raid failing. So I think that that's the most impactful theory that could come true. Shanks Elbaf is tricky because so many people are on board with it at this point that it is not remembered that I popularized the theory. Nobody, I don't know how many people, because now it's just taken for granted because now we're so deep into Wano, right, that most people have come to the conclusion that, okay, it seems very likely that the next arc around the corner might be the Shanks arc and that might be Elbaf and stuff like that. And a lot of people don't know if Big Mom's going to be a villain again, so a lot of people are just organically on board. At the time that I did the theory, which was end of Whole Cake Island, nobody thought that Elbaf was like pretty much nobody thought that Elbaf was going to be Shanks' arc. Some people had picked up on the Norse thing that Shanks had like the Norse boat or whatever. I didn't even know about that theory. If you watch my video, all of the reasons I give are completely new reasons that nobody was talking about at that time, and I didn't even know about the boat connection. So that really blew up the theory, and I made that theory popular, right? So I had by far the most popular theory out there on it, and a lot of people were discussing that for a long time, and that was controversial for a bit. Then at some point, it just became kind of the norm that like most people nowadays do think that Elbaf is going to be Shanks' arc. So I don't think I'm going to be getting much props when it happens, just because like I think I just guessed it too far beforehand, right? You guessed it too far beforehand, and then like at some point, everybody at some point or another are gonna organically through their own means come to the conclusion that hey, it's actually probably pretty likely that Elbaf is gonna be the next arc with Shanks. So I might get credit as one of the first people talking about it, probably credit for like the most developed theory on it that popularized it way back. But reality is, I think many people would have figured out Elbaf being Shanks' arc at some point in the Wano arc. I just talked about it earlier, like way before the curve. Nicholas Pimenta says thoughts on Blackbeard joining the fight to establish foreshadowing to his endgame power and fight versus Luffy. I don't think Blackbeard's joining this fight, in my opinion. In my opinion, I don't think he is. Actress says if Buggy chases Hadruden, since Hadruden left Buggy's delivery, and if Hadruden goes to Elbaf, then there could be a Buggy Shanks reunion incoming. That is a good point. I don't know if Buggy would chase after Hadruden like that, but I wouldn't be surprised if. I think Buggy is going to try and take shelter either among one of his two famous friends. Buggy has two famous friends. He has Shanks and he has Luffy. So he's going to be lining up to side with one of those two. I would not be surprised if it's Shanks. I thought Buggy might try and join Luffy's Grand Fleet or something like that, but I think it'd be cool if it's Shanks. Dan says, sure, you already ate a devil fruit. No, we're talking about if his sword eats a devil fruit. DREZ says, what are your thoughts on the upcoming movie film Red? Have you seen any of the posters / character designs? So since I saw film Z, I'm now mildly interested in film Red. Since we saw film Z, I'm now mildly interested in film Red. But I'm not really interested, you know what I mean? Like, it's not, it's just, like, it's not canon, so it's hard to get me interested, but, like, you know, it'll be higher quality animation and stuff like that. Maybe we get to see Shanks fight or something. We'll see. Blaze says, hey, Morge, have you seen the cover for 1043? The silhouettes in the background look like the Blackbeard parts are invading Whole Cake Island. No, I've not. I'll take a look at that after stream. I don't want to do anything that might slow the stream down. You know, streaming wise. But that's interesting. I would love to see that. I mean, it's something that people have talked about for a while. The Blackbeard pirates invading Whole Cake Island just makes sense, especially ever since Blackbeard said what he did. But it would be cool to see, especially a cover story seems like the right place to stage it. Thomas Cass says, have you seen the theory that Shuri's awakening will allow him to become completely intangible and Zoro will have to learn to cut literally nothing? That would be really, 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 really cool. There's also the theory that Shiryu is going to take out Mihawk. Like, Zoro will beat Mihawk, but then Shiryu will also beat Mihawk later. And nobody believes that Shiryu is going to beat Mihawk straight up. So he would have to be using something really, really tricky, like just being purely intangible or something like that. I think that's a great idea. Trevor Rogers says, hey, Mr. Mork, we received info that Zoan fruits tend to have their own will. Why do you think Momo's fruit was considered a failure by Vegapunk? Question mark. Why was Momo's fruit considered a failure by Vegapunk? Maybe it can't awaken? Maybe it doesn't have its own will? Like, maybe you can't artificially create something that has its own will? Although, ships in One Piece have their own will, and they're artificially created. I don't know why Momo's food was considered a failure, but it might have been Vegapunk might have been mistaken because Momo ate it and it worked, so it might not have actually been a failure, or maybe it can't do awakening, something along those lines. Dustin Carpenter says, "Do you subscribe to the thought that Gear Fifth will kill Luffy or come close? It seems to affect his heart. If so, Law might perform the surgery." That Gear Fifth will kill Luffy or come close. It seems to affect his heart. I would love to see that because the scene of like, there's so much talk about like, oh, Luffy died or whatever. Oda did it in a manner that like didn't feel as impactful. You know what I mean? Like, I would love to see like Luffy actually on the verge of death in some way, and like Law potentially having to do the surgery, to sacrifice to save him or something along those lines. That would be great views for Law. Ivan back from the card shop says, to continue my old questions, I work in HEB, aka Texas store, so I don't know if you live there, and I phrased the Usopp one badly. He doesn't really have Toon Force attacks, they're just themed that way. I have not been in an HEB recently. Yeah, I know what you mean. They're themed that way. Zexiac says blue version is cooler. Yeah, some people saying the blue version. Yeah, maybe you feel that way now because you're used to it. But like reality, like if you remember at that time, most people thought the red version was way cooler. Myself included. I'm just used to the blue version now. Ivan back from the card shop says his big hammer, the impressions like Luffy, and the way he took out Sugar to get that title. I think it could tie in with his development with Loki. Yeah, you're right. I mean, he's always been a cartoonish like character in terms of like his tricks and stuff like that. Uninspired says, "Do you think Luffy copied Killer's Scyther Sonic?" No, I don't think so. When Killer first did that Sonic move, I was so confused. Like I didn't understand. Like I had to wait and like see other people's opinions on what happened because I literally didn't understand how Killer was able to damage Kaido, and then people were like, or like how he extended his sword, and people were like, no, that's just a Sonic wave. So I was just confused by the way it was depicted. The word Sonic should have tipped me off there, but I just didn't get it. I was like, damn, he can cut Kaido like he just skewered Kaido, but it makes sense. It was just sound waves. Krisha Heckman says, what if part of One Piece is that the realization of the world being as it is because of Looney Tune logic? I mean, it doesn't have to be Looney Tune. I like the One Piece world the way it is, where like reality is a bit stretched, just because that's just the way it is. Seems to fit. I don't think it needs to get any more deeper explanation than that. Babtron says we'll be watching later, Mr. Work. Shout out to #BabNation. There's no Bab Nation. You're not. No one's being shouted out here. Mr. Crescent says hilarious to think that Ace was going to fight Kaido, but could make for an interesting alternate reality where Luffy fights Ace as a calamity. Yeah, I mean that could be pretty cool, but it's just like, yeah, Kaido would have massacred Ace there, but if he kept being given second chances like Luffy was, then eventually Ace would get there too. I think to a point where he could fight evenly with Kaido. I'm just gonna assume that Ace's potential ceiling in the story is Prime Roger. I'm just gonna assume that was the ceiling. That's one of the reasons why Ace had to be removed, because you just can't have Ace and Luffy both in the same story. It just doesn't work. Ward Galore says, "Isn't Luffy white because he's an old cartoon?" But like old cartoons, like they were a good mix of color. Like I mean, it was black, and you had like Mickey Mouse was always a black colored cartoon. So I don't really know what that means. Maybe just making it black and white, just like I mean, making Luffy white just has more of a callback to black and white concept in general. I'm not sure. Abobkar Obad just says lol. Thanks. Appreciate it. Trevor Roberts says, hey, Mr. Mork, we received info that. No, we covered you. We covered you, Trevor. Trying to sneak back in. Buggy versus Usopp. Grizzly Adams says, Usopp should destroy Buggy at this point in time. Grizzly Adams says, Morge, you once said that Wiper was Luffy's true rival. I maintain that if Yeah, I'll finish your question. I think a discussion about Luffy's various rival/pseudo-rival figures would make a great video. That's actually a great point because I've been wanting to do a video on Wiper, but I've been trying to think like what's a good way to fit it in because no one's gonna watch a video just on Wiper. But I could trick people. I could trick people by doing a video on Luffy's rivals, really just to get to talking about just to talk about Wiper. Kakashi snitched. Not. Hold on. Hold on. Guys, forget about what I just said about tricking people. I don't want to trick anyone. It's just if you see a video come out about Luffy's rivals, make sure to watch that one. Oh, we're almost at 1,000 likes, guys. We can get to 1,000 likes. That's so easy. We're almost there. Kakashi Snitch 9 says, Morge, which villain do you think will have the most interesting and complex backstory out of Kaido, Blackbeard, and Akainu? This is very difficult because I think Akainu and especially Blackbeard are set up to have excellent backstories, but Kaido's seems so interesting right now. Really, really, really interesting right now. I'm gonna say I think Blackbeard. I think the order will be Blackbeard will have the most interesting backstory. I think Kaido. Okay, I think Okay, there's two aspects of it, right? Which will be the most tragic, right? Some of the most compelling, right? And like character-wise, most interesting. And then which kind of like has the most juicy sort of reveals and like lore, like the backstory that like tells us the most new information, I suppose, right? Like we know that no matter what, Dragon's backstory, even if it's not the saddest, I expect it to be sad, but we look forward to it because it will just explain so much, right? We want to know so much about it. So here's my take. I think Akainu will have a very tragic backstory. I think Kaido will probably have a sad backstory, but like his might be more interesting just because it's the most like maybe the most interesting backstory. I think we will learn potentially about rocks through him. I think he has a very, very complex life path that has led him to where he is now. Right? So I think Kaido might have a more interesting and like very like there might be more twists and surprises to what Kaido's backstory is, and we might learn more about the general. It might change our perspective on things and him on a character more. I think Akainu might have the saddest backstory out of the three, potentially. But I think Blackbeard is really set up to have the best of both worlds. I think Blackbeard is probably going to have a very, very tragic backstory, maybe more tragic than either Kaido or Akainu's. Like maybe the most tragic backstory in One Piece, for all we know. I think Blackbeard is set up to have a very tragic backstory and a backstory that will tell us a lot about, general lore stuff, general world-shifting perspective stuff. So I think Blackbeard... I think Blackbeard will have the best backstory, and then Kaido and Akainu I think could go either way. Right now, I'm obviously more interested in Kaido's, so I have a bias, and I'll say Kaido's second most interesting, I guess. Oh shoot, we're almost at 1,000. That's pretty high. Red and Silver 741 says, "What if Gear 5th is white under the moon and gold/fiery under the sun?" That is such a cool idea. That is such a cool idea. It'd be really interesting if, like, what if the ability is stronger under the sun? It's a great idea. Ron Winter says Kaido is the mirror of Luffy, a dreamer. Yeah, I think we're gonna get a backstory that paints Kaido as very, very similar to Luffy in many ways early on, and then something changing that partway through. Myron12 says, perhaps Luffy's form being white bears significance to when Horty took those pills from the Tamate box. Yeah, someone mentioned that as well. CP0 agents also have shown interest in them. I don't know. I mean, like, we did get the age, I mean, like, the fallout, like, you know what I mean, like, the drawback little panels and stuff like that. Luffy seemingly aging, or at least getting very tired briefly. Oh, 1K! We just hit 1K likes. All right, good job, everybody. Good job. Thanks. I appreciate it. 1K likes. Look at that. Golden, thanks. Wart Galore says, by old cartoon, I mean old, like Felix the Cat. I don't even know what that is. Let's take a look. Wait, I hope this doesn't slow down the stream. Felix the Cat is also black. What are you talking about? Although I do recognize that cat. A dance? You guys want to dance? A Bollywood dance? So this is a One Piece stream? A Bollywood dance? That's interesting. Bollywood. I could do one of those, I think, actually. I could probably do one of those. You know what? I could do one of those. I will do a Bollywood dance. Let's set some sort of a goal for this. Because I do want it to be an equal trade-off. So if we get maybe 2,000... we get maybe 2,000 likes, I think I'll do a Bollywood dance. If we could get there. If we could get to about 2,000 likes, I think I could do a Bollywood dance. Joshua Scott says, which Luffy enemy would be the most fun to hang with? Probably Buggy, right? He's a clown. Pretty straightforward. Most of Luffy's villains you would not want to hang out with. I'd say Buggy. Buggy's the most fun to hang with. Mr. Crescent says, oh, shoot. We scrolled. Mr. Crescent says, would Luffy ever go out of his way to save a random island where it doesn't further his goals or help someone he knows? Like if Dragon just asked him. I don't think so. Like, Luffy's a character that really has to connect in a certain way. Like, he doesn't just go, doing that stuff. He does have to connect to somebody there in some way. Like, he has to be doing it for someone he knows. But, at the same time, like, so you're like, okay, if Dragon just asked him to go help, right? At the same time, with the Alabasta situation, right? Luffy did say yes to that. And it was a little weird. Like, Luffy did say yes to that because, Vivi was asking him, and he liked Vivi, right? So it's like, it just has to be, if somebody that he connects with is like, hey, can you go save the people that I care about? Then he'll do it. With Dragon, it's like, if Luffy just meets Dragon, Luffy has no connection to Dragon, I doubt if Dragon said, like, hey, save this place, do it. Like, Luffy would just do it. On the other hand, if with Sabo, right, Sabo's like, hey, this island that we're trying to save needs help. Can you come help us? Luffy would do it. I think. I mean, it did happen with Wano, pretty much, but it also aligned with all of Luffy's goals. Blank name says drop it, 1.3k. I don't know about that. I don't know about that. I think 1.3. I like it where I dropped it. I like it at 2k. 1.3k is a pretty extreme negotiation. We have to haggle a little bit. I like it at 2k. Yeah, Ron Winter says if his Grand Fleet needed it or Sabo needed it, he would do it 100%. Yeah, pretty much. That's the thing. Like, Dragon's just a dude to Luffy right now. Like Luffy's got... I don't think Luffy's just going to do something for Dragon just because Dragon asked him to do it. YouTube commenter, nice name, says, cartoon like Doodlebob from SpongeBob make lol. Yeah, Doodlebob was a great SpongeBob bit. Doodlebob was actually terrifying, to be honest. He was kind of terrifying. AJK says, Morge, every time I come and I make the like button explode, you start your fraudulent act. I'm sick and tired of this, Morge. I don't know what you're talking about. I honestly don't. Phantom Greyfire says, Morge, I'm once again asking you to find a better stream layout that fits the chat box. I have made the chat box incredibly huge, but you are right. It could always be bigger. Oh, now you got everyone complaining. Pengu Puncher says, wow, what a big text box, Morge. You guys remember how small the chat box used to be? I feel like people are forgetting. That's the thing. People never be happy. People forget how small the chat box used to be. It used to be wide, the size of... It used to be literally all inside the box. That's how small the box was. It was all inside the chat box. All right. Now it's gigantic. It's ridiculously big. I could put my hand out here, and it's already overlapping with the chat box. How crazy is that? But I understand you guys like your chat. I will look into it, as I've said multiple times, and see if I can find us a better stream layout. But let it never be forgotten. I will always value myself over the chat. So if this chat box tries to get bigger than me, we're going to have a problem. All right. So it's me versus the chat box, and I'm biased towards myself. Grizzly Adams says Wiper is my favorite arc side character. If you make a vid about him, I'll watch it on repeat on all my devices at once to boost its numbers. Thanks, Grizzly Adams. That's like, it's probably like 2 or 3 devices. If you watch it on repeat, okay, that's a solid 10 views promised from Grizzly Adams. 10 to 12 views promised from Grizzly Adams. Is anyone willing to top that? Grizzly Adams is pitching in his 10 views. If we could get it to maybe if we can get it to a solid 200, 300K, that'd be nice. We've got Grizzly Adams from pitching in a nice 10 to 12 from his. All right, that's it. We're doing a poll. Nurgangi says, whatever happened to Wano Report? Wano Report, when was the last Wano Report? When was the last round of Restless Kings? Thanks. Do you want a bigger me or bigger chat box? Wait. What do you want to be bigger? Question. Wano Report. Let me think. I try to remember when the last Wano Report was, because a few things happened. Okay, one was basically, I think, at a certain point, once I started shifting towards doing One Piece like every week, right? Because for a long time I was not a weekly One Piece YouTuber. A long time I was just like on off whenever, right? Oh man, this poll is actually tighter than I expected. I thought you guys were going to entirely vote for Chatbox. I'm actually genuinely touched that 42% of you are saying that you want me to be bigger. The poll, by the way, won't influence a thing. So it's just me gauging the temperature. So at a certain point, especially when One Piece became more my like part of like my weekly routine in terms of like work I have to do and stuff. Like I just got tired of talking about One Piece every week, and that coincided with Ohara moving to Japan. It was way easier to do Wano reports when he was in Germany, because it was just like the time zone was much more flexible. So once he was in Japan, it was like either one of us had to tank doing late night or early morning on a weekend. And we did that occasionally for a bit, and then at a certain point it was just like it's hard to keep this up, and it's not really worth doing if we don't keep it up. And we both still really enjoyed doing it. And I think like once we stopped doing the Wano report, like that didn't change much in terms of like just being able to talk and catch up or whatever. But it was like pushing ourselves to talk One Piece every single week on a weekend at a time that was always not convenient for one of us, basically, because we didn't have time during the week with the time zones. So weekend was the only time that really made sense. And then that meant that like one of us was always having to make a sacrifice in terms of like either I wake up early or you're doing your Saturday evening or something like that, basically. And like we didn't always want to talk One Piece every week, especially because we were both doing that as our job anyway. So we're already talking One Piece a lot generally. And I think around that time, Ohara was also trying to branch out into other series. So it was just a storm of different things basically that happened. I think if he'd never moved to Japan, then it's possible we would have still kept doing it. But I do think that there was like a end point in terms of like how much we wanted to talk One Piece every week versus like if we just want to talk to each other, we can just do that outside of the Wano report. You know what I mean? All right. So I defeated the chat box in that poll. Good to know. Demon says 3-year anniversary of the first raid fail video, even before it was called the raid fail. Congrats, Morge. I am thinking about going back and relabeling that video for just branding purposes. I called that the Fire Festival will end in failure. A lot of people don't even know that that was the first raid fail video. A lot of people don't know that because it's labeled something different. And I'm like, no, that was the first one. That's the OG, and I think that still has the clear framework for why it's gonna fail. But I don't know if it would feel wrong to change it. It would feel wrong to change it at this point. But I do feel like a title I might change the title. I'll figure it out at some point. Manga Lore says Zoro was super upset when Usopp left the crew and begged to come back. What will he do when he finds out Sanji did the same, maybe even worse? No, Sanji's is not the same because even Nami said she'll never forget what Sanji did. But Nami literally did. She forgave him shortly afterwards. She forgave him shortly afterwards, and she didn't understand why Sanji was doing what he was doing, whereas Luffy did. What Sanji did with the whole Luffy situation was Sanji acting outside of his own will. He was doing something because there was an external force that was forcing him to do this, right? Usopp's situation, it was not. That's why Usopp is the only, like, why did Zoro not ask Robin to apologize? Why did Zoro not ask Nami to apologize when she went to Arlong, right? Usopp is separate because Usopp was the only situation. Sorry. Usopp was the only character who personally decided this crew is not for me anymore, and I don't like the direction of the crew is going, and I don't agree with Luffy's decisions as a captain. That was all internal Usopp stuff. That was all things that he had personally decided. So he is the only person who did not have something forcing his hand, right? Whether or not you think Sanji made the right decision based on the external pressures put on him, everything Sanji was doing was to protect the crew because he thought that it was what was best for the crew, right? So he was acting in the same way Robin did, same way that Nami did back in Arlong Park. Usopp is the only character that would ever have to have an apology demanded of. Mangalore, no, we covered that just now. All right, I think we're good. Nurgangi says best One Piece channel. One viral video and you're gonna blow up. Thanks, Noor. The other reason I want to change the name of that video is partly just because it has the first clear, most clear singular argument that like will never change as to why the raid will fail, right? So it provides that framework, and then any other future raid failing videos build off of that. So when new people hear about me and they're like, "Oh, raid failing and stuff like that," ideally they should go see that video first. So maybe I should just like to understand the crux of the argument basically. So maybe I should make that video. I should just change that video title to "Why the Raid Will Fail" original or something like that. Anuj Agarwal says, "Does the whole Cake Island video not count as viral?" So viral is it depends, right? Because it's like, what's the scale? Like, what counts as viral? Because, I mean, in the context of the One Piece community, having a video like Ohara's get to like 1 million views or something, that's clearly viral, right? So I'd say that's the context of viral in the One Piece community. But that's a hard standard to beat because like no other One Piece video had really done something like that in God knows how long. It's like most people didn't even think that was possible. So I think for a long time the standards of like viral by One Piece video standards like 600, 700K, something like that. So in terms of viewership, like it's just naturally going to slowly increase over time. And I don't know if my videos lend themselves to going like viral in that sense, but I'm generally happy with the viewership trend so far. I think I'm generally happy if like a video hits over 100K in its like lifetime or past its first month or so, basically. So that's where I'm at. Oh, Brago got a video over 1 million. Was it his Shanks video? I think Brago did something that went like viral by some standards. Also, I'm gonna. Oh yeah, it was the Shanks video. Yeah. It didn't go like Ohara's video. It was a step beyond that. You know what I mean? Like, I think the Brago video. I know the video you're talking about, right? I think that video it did go viral essentially, but like, it was like I still viewed it as like, damn, that's like a really really good performing One Piece video. Like that's probably the best a One Piece video can do. Ohara's video kind of redefined at least the speed at which it took off, right? it kind of redefined the concept of like how big it, like how widespread or how much fire a One Piece video can catch, because it was just everywhere and it was being talked about by everybody, right? And I think, like, at least talking with other YouTubers and stuff, it kind of did change the meta for One Piece YouTube to a degree, because it showed people, I guess, like how big One Piece videos can get, and also kind of like it brought a whole wave of like how people titled their videos, how people changed their thumbnails, and video topics and stuff have skewed more towards theories than ever before. I think since that video. So, um, yeah. I mean, shout outs to Brago, but I don't think it's. Actually, no, I take that back. No shout outs to Brago. No shout outs to Brago. I do think that the Ohara video is kind of, yeah, to this day, probably incomparable in terms of the impact it had on the One Piece YouTube scene. The part here says, one of my favorite Zoro moments is still his first scene eating food from the ground. I wish Oda would highlight his kindness like that more, because I feel some people wrongly see him as a badass sociopath. Look, man, in general, more character moments, like more little character moments for the Straw Hats would be great. Even something as simple as Zoro walking into a shop and buying a sword, that could be a great scene, right? Like, we know that. We like, that was an iconic One Piece scene back in the day. We don't really have moments like that for the Straw Hats or characters in general at this point, which, again, hope we get at some point back into the story. Maybe post-Wano, where things clear up a little bit and we have smaller casts of characters or whatever. Yeah, Codeface says viral should be hitting 1 million in a week. Yeah, and I think Ohara's video did that. And like, again, there's like One Piece standards of viral versus like actual viral, which means you get 10 million, 20 million views really fast or something. Captain Face says, thoughts on Sphinx Island after Wano. Luffy visits Ace's grave. Whitebeard Jr. story, last road poneglyph. Luffy learns to go to Elbaf to meet Shanks. I don't think that. No. I think Weevil shows up in Wano personally, because I think there's a lot of things set up for Weevil to show up in Wano. I don't know if the last road poneglyph is. I just don't know if Luffy's ever going to make a visit there personally. Tyler says, wait, why no shout out to Brago? Because it's not deserved. And I've complained about this so many times, and yet it keeps happening to me. I went to Brago's stream. He was streaming about 10:45 last Friday. So I went to stream, and I was even considering joining in the stream. And like, I just messaged in chat like why I like the new ability and stuff. And then I immediately saw I didn't have a wrench. I was not modded there. I swear I've bitched about not being modded on Brago's channel 1 million times. I don't know when he finds the time to do it, but he'll mod me, and then the next time I'm back, I'm unmodded. So I get modded, and it gets taken away at some point. No, don't link to his channel. God, what are you doing, Phantom Greyfire? Don't link to his channel. It consistently happens. And the fucked up part is he is mod both of his channels. Brago the Ace and BDA Law are both modded in this channel. I mod both his channels. He doesn't mod me in either of his channels. It's ridiculous. Ridiculous. All right. I'm going to call the stream in 3 minutes because it will be the clean 9:30 mark. Uncle Paco says, wait, but you were modded though. Not at first. I had to complain about it. I showed up. You can go to that stream. I showed up. I dropped my little paragraph explaining why I liked the chapter. And then I immediately saw I'm not modded. So then I started spamming caps lock, like complaining about it. And I have to sit there and listen on the stream with Brago being like, oh, is that Morge? Is that actually Morge? I'm like, how... Of course you're not going to know if that's actually me, because you didn't mod me. Obviously you don't know if it's me or not, because I don't have a wrench. I was modded by the end of that, but I know it's only temporary. I'm not going to be a mod again by the time I get back there. Pirate Hero says, Morge, Mario Galaxy or Odyssey? Galaxy, because I haven't played Odyssey, and I like Galaxy quite a bit. Hawkeye says, "What do you think Who's Who reaction would be to see Luffy's awakening?" Who's I think we know so little about Who's Who's such a barely fleshed out character that I have no idea what his reaction would be. Like I couldn't imagine one. Maybe something like, "Oh, that's the Gomu no Mi Nika Fruit Awakening." Oh, maybe something like that. Maybe something like, "Oh, that's crazy." Maybe that's what he'd say. I think, yeah, Nika base like the entire. It's still wild to me that this whole idea of like the Gomu Gomu no Mi being special and the Nika Fruit Awakening. This is all shit that we just learned from like 1.5 chapters of Who's Who. This random ass side character just like spilling a bunch of exposition shit and then Jinbei one shotting him, which is kind of hilarious. Ron Winter says he'll be like, "Is that Nika? Wah?" Yeah, that sounds spot on. Who's Who? Am I right? Absolutely crazy. All right, guys. Jace Hopkins says, "Oh man, Jace, thanks so much. That is a crazy last minute super chat, and I love what you have to say. Raid fails 2022. That is I think you're onto something there. It's pretty smart super chat. Probably the best one to end the day. Now, in general, when I end stream, some people say that it's too abrupt. Here's the thing. I usually just hit end stream, and the stream is so laggy that when it actually ends for you guys, I actually have very little control for it. AGMC says One Piece. So I'm going to try and do a smooth transition this time.